name's Scott Wright. I'm the director of the Livestock and Forage Center of Excellence here just south of Clement. The Livestock Forage Center of Excellence is really a nexus of capacity. What it does is it brings together under one roof what was previously feedlot, cow-calf, brings together veterinary medicine and the research capacity that lies within that. What it allows us to do is do research, tech transfer, development of knowledge, capacity and training, all the way from soil to plant, plant to animal, animal all the way through to people. So when we bring together that capacity, we incorporate almost 50 quarters of land, 5 facilities depending on how you look at this, and it allows us to do work along that full continuum within the beef and livestock industries. Well, in terms of employees, we're running about 15 on average through the staff. Through calving season, we tend to add up a little bit. We have about 40 projects going at any one time as we look over the course of the year and end up with somewhere around that 15 to 20 students, again, depending on the project, depending on what's happening at any given time. So what the LFC allows us to do is approach research questions and problems of the industry from that whole continuum of the industry. Instead of diving down narrow and deep and providing the answer in a typical kind of research column, what it allows us to do is expand that to more systems research that allows us, for example, to look at the effect of one treatment throughout the production cycle for that producer. So the LFCE, when we talk about impact on industries, it starts with the livestock industry and expands throughout the agricultural industry. So if you think about what comes to the livestock industry, what services that industry, and then on the tail end, taking us all the way through that packing, cutting into retail and grocery side. And so we blend then, if you will, science-based research, biology research. We're open to having social responsibility and social economic kinds of questions that LFCE is a part of, and it allows us to complete that cycle again. We're all about partnership. We're all about pulling pieces together and being just a part of a greater whole. From the smart farm side, LFCE's taken the approach, together with a number of our partners at the university and a node that we've created here at LFCE, to look at how producers really need to be able to use the data that's being created. Let me use the example. There are sensors throughout. Tractors are censored. We have soil sensors. We have sensors underneath the feedlot to all provide us with information. That information doesn't create value unless the producer can understand what's important to them, actually pull that information out and make decisions around it. Picture for us, if you will, the idea of a single pane of glass. Producer gets up in the morning, turns on that television, and on there, let's say there's 25 stoplights, red, green, yellow. Only one of them is flashing yellow to tell them, for example, that cow in the barn is actually in the process of calving right now, or that water out in the far back pen isn't working after all and providing water to that animal. It can be as simple as how does it make the world, the production for that producer easier, or it can be as complex as when that heifer is ready to actually be bred. So we joined the Pan-Canadian Smart Farm Network, led by Olds College, as an opportunity to look at how universities can bring knowledge to questions. In other words, moving beyond the commercialized technology and the early startups, and actually bringing knowledge creation into the conversation on what we do with those tools, with that information. And really, I go back to that simple television screen again, give the producer the ability to make better decisions. It's not the farm that's smart, it's actually helping to make the producer smarter. And so the question on how we work with startups, I want to go back to our node, if you will. We call it our Innovation Farm node now at LFCE. We have a group of partners there that include SaskTel, it includes North Star Business Systems, it includes Kavi, or the artificial intelligence component to SaskTel, if you will. It connects these services so that we can do a number of things. What we look to do is be able to have the ability to take information from a sensor and put it into a receptor of some kind so that it can be analyzed and or stored as appropriate, and then transmitted to where it can either engage in that artificial intelligence process or be transmitted to the producer wherever they happen to be. As we've built this ecology, it provides us the opportunity to look at startups. And so small companies, if you will, that are coming through the door and saying, hey, I've got this great idea. The things that we try and do within our node, and we're very much in that startup phase and looking for how we build that process ourselves. The idea is we want to be able to provide a bit of a scientific sniff test. Does it do what the technology, what the belief is the technology will do? Let's put it that way. Will it be reliable, consistent, measurable, and can we validate that process? And then finally, how do we take that then, and is it economic in terms of the value that's created? And I'll use a small example. We worked with a group down in a group of students coming from the US that have a sensor that they place within the animal, and what it senses is the movement within the rumen and some of the rumen parameters. It's targeted at dairy, so price is a little higher, quite frankly. And when they come and talk to us about will this fit into a beef farm, we talk, for example, about that cow only has a $50 bill on each year. And on a really good year, that might be a $100 bill on each year. So if that sensor alone is going to take up all of the value of that cow, it's a non-starter. And so we try and build that conversation in to help companies think about what's going to make it easier, what's going to reduce steps, what's going to reduce labor, what's going to make things more efficient, and is it economic for the producer to even jump there? And so we span the range of projects, and I want to talk about one. I think of it as a cluster project in the back of my mind. Dr. Bart Lardner started a grazing systems project, which looks at annual cropping systems and perennial systems, 2 of each, and it begins to evaluate not only the standard productivity, how many pounds of beef am I going to get off this acre, but it also lets us look at things like what's happening in soil carbon, what's happening in soil moisture and that soil recycling, which gives you a look at a peak, if you will, at soil health. And he's incorporated things like greenhouse gas emissions. Which of these systems is contributing to the highest level of greenhouse gas emission, and really now beginning to add on the opportunity to look down into what we call the microbiome. Those billions and billions and billions of microbes that exist at the soil surface in interaction with the plant roots and deeply affect those productivity pieces. So instead of just looking at a small piece in isolation, again, the facility, the capacity, the research team, the tremendous researchers from the university that we're allowed to work with, actually can put together those pieces to make that kind of a systems project. It helps the public understand the true impact and the true benefit, if you will, of the grazing animal on the landscape. It helps producers begin to evaluate terms like regenerative agriculture. And really, if you think about regenerative agriculture, my argument would be it's about soil health, it's about water cycling and the water cycle within, and it's about biodiversity. And all 3 of those get covered when you begin to look at projects that connect the dots like this. One more that I'm just going to touch on. We've got a very exciting project within LFCE in 2 parameters to it. One of them is really looking at the genetic makeup or the genomics behind the bison herd in North America today. The opportunity for preservation of bison, both in terms of plains and woods, removing cattle genes, removing susceptibility to disease and some of those components that are there, but working to really maintain that landmark species in Canada. Attached to that then is the producers that are saying, this is wonderful, and what does it mean? So side by side with deep genetics work on the bison side is the ability to look at bison production. And so we have a project started at what we call LFCE Goodale here that's looking at production parameters around bison, and not just the usual, if they're fed this, how much do they gain? It begins to look into the animal behavior characteristics associated with them. If they're on a hotter feed, how does that affect their feeding behavior with an animal that's considerably different in behavior from a normal cattle situation? And I'm only going to add one more little piece on this. And it's the opportunity to say the genomics work, the ability to dive down into the genetic makeup of the animal is also the starting point for beef reproduction and beef genetics that allowed us to go to that space. Think, if you will, of a herd side test, the ability to reach out to that animal that's come into the chute, pluck a hair, and with a quick analysis understand whether that animal was better suited for pasture or for feeding, with a quick check of a nose swab as to whether that animal has potential for antimicrobial resistance, or whether an illness, for example, could be treated more simply with an appropriate treatment. So tools that provide the industry, again, with common sense and quick response to the challenges that they're facing side by side today. And so we talked about LFCE. Really, this is the starting point. And 2018, this was a green field that was being converted into the facilities that you see now, the incredible facilities that we've got available to us. All of those have come together. I think there's tremendous opportunity to build on the systems research that we talk about. LFCE is all about partnerships, right? It's the industry in partnership. And when I speak about the industry, I talk about producers, livestock organizations, the opportunity now to look at feed and feed interface, the opportunity to look at the services that are provided. I see LFCE as this gathering place for the technology research and opportunities that the industry can really take advantage of as we move forward. This is the start. This is just the nucleus of where we can go with building these partners. LFCE gives the industry, the Saskatchewan-based industry, the opportunity to look at their challenges in a very challenging industry and turn them into opportunities. It creates the space for partnerships to occur and for innovations, if you will, to come together to create not additive value, but multiple value. The capacity, I talk about this as a nexus of capacity. It's the opportunity for those things to happen. And we're continuing to grow.